Trauma Therapist Podcast, episode 486. All right, folks, before we get started, in this episode, we cover some intimate and possibly triggering areas of trauma and abuse. Listener discretion is advised. All right, guys, welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise awareness of trauma and to support new trauma therapists just starting out on their trauma-informed journey. I do that through this podcast and my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0. If you're a therapist of any kind, interested in learning about trauma, and you're looking for support and inspiration, I invite you to check out Trauma Therapist 2.0 by going to traumatherapist2.com. That's traumatherapist, the number 2.com. All right, let's get started. This episode is sponsored by Somatic Experiencing. Trauma may be a fact of life, but it doesn't have to be a life sentence. Somatic Experiencing is a psychobiological method of addressing clients' physical and emotional trauma conditions and helps to give voice to their experiences without a need for them to retell their story. SE focuses on regulation of the nervous system and offers the opportunity to engage, complete, and resolve the body's instinctual responses to traumatic experiences. For more information regarding somatic experiencing and the SE professional training program, the Trauma Therapist Podcast listeners can visit traumahealing.org/TTP. That's traumahealing.org/TTP. All right, guys, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am very excited to have as my guest today, Robert Greene. Robert, welcome, man.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here with you.
All right. So Robert is a U.S. Navy veteran, hospital corpsman, who was diagnosed with PTSD in January of 2016. After a long battle with his internal demons, he decided to immerse himself in ancient practices as a means to master his mind. During his time on active duty after deployment, Robert attempted suicide 2 times and was placed on anti-depressants and sleeping medications. After battling an addiction to alcohol and sleeping pills, when he was coming off active duty, the thought that he had a serious problem didn't cross his mind at all. At that point, he fell into the toxic pattern of what he called the bulletproof facade most military men wear, and so didn't admit to himself or anyone else that he had a serious problem. As he describes it, as long as he kept things together on the outside and his career life was going good, that's all that mattered. Robert kept this whole song and dance going for 8 years, he describes. In the midst of a drug addiction, toxic relationships, and his career life falling apart, he attempted suicide again in 2015, 2 years after he lost his father to suicide in 2013. All right, man, a lot in there. Appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. Before we get going, Robert, share with our listeners where you're calling from and where you're from originally, too.
Originally, I'm from New Mexico. I haven't lived in the United States since the age of 21, so it's been quite a while, almost 16 years. I'm calling now from the Philippines. I'm on a small island called Boracay. This has been home for the past 4 years. I usually stay here for a few months a year, then I go study in India. So I go back and forth. But I'm on a small island called Boracay in the middle of the Philippines in the Visayas region. It's 5 in the morning here.
Okay, wow. Thank you for doing this. So how did you get here? How did things start to turn from you? In your bio, it sounded like you went through the ringer, man.
Yeah, I had a long battle with trauma, with a lot of mental health issues. I didn't write it in the bio, but I lost my mother to cancer when I was 4 years old.
Oh, man. Sorry to hear that.
Having that experience to start life out with, it kind of gave me this kind of, I don't know, how do I say this, normalization of trauma. Like when things are so kind of chaotic and hectic in life that it just kind of normalizes in the mind. So for me, growing up in a very dysfunctional household, my father was also struggling with alcohol addiction and all this, and my stepmother had her own psychological issues. Like the military was just kind of just a way out, away from home. I'd rather go risk my life for my country than stay home. So it was a good way to just kind of get out into the world. And doing that, I mean, it was a very good experience, but I think the biggest problem with the military is the psychological conditioning never just turns off. And they give you these classes on how to write your resume, how to try to get a federal job, but they never say, how do you deprogram your world-class emotional brainwashing and programming? And I think that's one of the reasons for the really high veteran suicide rate. So we're psychologically conditioned to be adverse to feeling our own emotions. And when you have a lot of trauma inside, when you have a lot of unresolved issues, it gives you severe imbalances and a limited means for expression. So that's a place I was in when I attempted to take. A lot of it was due to really just having all of these things inside that you don't know what to do with. And it started to affect my sleep. I had a really bad case of insomnia. Sometimes I still have to battle with it. I'm very sensitive to noise. I'm very sensitive, irritated or angry. I don't sleep for 3 to 4 days at a time. I have to really work to calm myself down. But back then it was really severe. And it just kind of boils down to really have a healthy outlet for release. A lot of substance abuse, a lot of dependence on medication. And that also leads to toxic relationships, as I wrote in my bio, because when you're, I guess, involved in those things very deeply and that becomes your life, then those are the kind of people you attract into your life, especially on the military culture, then even afterwards. So that was another thing that I've had to learn to work around. But
what, if I may, just jump in here for a second. So when you went into the military, you talked about your mom passing away when you were very young and growing up in that kind of, I think you used the word, kind of dysfunctional environment.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And using the military to kind of get away. So did your experience in the military just kind of was that the final straw in a sense, or just definitely exacerbate, intensify all the trauma that you had experienced up until that point?
I don't know. It's kind of a double-edged sword in that one, because I don't want to say it was all bad and it wasn't all super good. There's a lot of different colors in the middle of this, but
sure,
I would say that in terms of me to live a better life, like I got a college scholarship, I got to be able to see the world, I got to be able to travel different places, to have a career set and these kind of things. It was really good for that. But in terms of the internal architecture of what I was going through at the time and how it shaped me internally with bad, patterns and toxic habits and these kind of things, and it did really make the situation much worse, because the military is systematic your ability to empathize with people. And
hang on, Robert. I want to pause here because you're breaking up a lot, and I'm wondering if you're able to wire in. Are you just on Wi-Fi?
Yes, I don't have a plug on my computer.
Okay.
What is this? Maybe I can try this on my phone.
Yeah, it's cutting out kind of too much.
All right, let's switch gears here and see if I can do this on the cell phone that has a different network, and that might be better. Let's leave it here.
All right. Yeah, you actually sound better too.
Okay.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So my question didn't mean to imply that everything in your military experience was negative, but I'm just wondering, was it the last straw in a sense, and things just you came out of there with having experienced PTSD. Was that from combat or active duty or?
Yeah, I was from active duty. I was deployed to the Civil War area in Liberia and Monrovia in 2003, doing combat support operations as part of the medical team. I got deployed also to Somalia and the Horn of Africa, and I was doing combat support operations for Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. So the stress of that was quite intense, to say the least.
So walk us through what happens when you get out of the military.
Basically, I got out, and I think it might be a bit different now, but when I got out of the military, you're given something called TAPS. TAPS means Transition Assistance Program, and they basically sit you down in a classroom for around 2 weeks. That's 10 calendar days. And they tell you all of these tips on how to convert your military service skills to a resume, what government companies are going to hire you, kind of try to prepare you for the differences in being out in the civilian worlds. And they kind of just throw these negative implications at you that there's a high rate of veteran homelessness, there's a high rate of veteran drug addiction. It's very hard to get a job as a veteran. Then they sit this little contract in front of you before the last day. They said, "Are you sure you want to get out? Because you're probably not going to make it."
Oh,
Yeah, that's basically what they tell you. You're probably not going to make it, and you're probably going to just end up some homeless vet somewhere. So, are you sure you want to get out? And that's when I was like, no, I'm getting out. And that was about it. So afterwards, you go through a process of closing out your paperwork, I guess. So I got transferred from Japan to Washington State, and I spent about a week there waiting to get out. Then once they hand you all your paperwork, your DD-214, your medical record, your service record, and all that, then they book you a ticket and send you to wherever you want to go and kind of wash their hands of you. And that's that.
Mm. And so what was the process for you? How were you able to manage and survive in a sense?
I mean, the military really programs you to ignore yourself internally and just focus on the external factors of your life. So focus on your career, focus on your education. As long as everything on the outside is together, then the inside doesn't really matter. And I was still on that. It took me years to break through that programming. So when I got out of the military, I went home for a brief period of 3 months. And that was a real disaster. It was a real nightmare going back there. I remember as an 18-year-old kid leaving home, I said, I'll never live here again. I'd rather live on the streets and live in this hellhole again, because I really didn't like the environment I was living in. And so I went home for 3 months. I ended up living with my brother, not with my parents, with my dad. And after that, I went and I enrolled and I went back to school. I went to college. So I went back to Japan and I studied languages, studied Japanese language and culture studies to learn how to be an interpreter. And I finished my bachelor's degree in Asian studies, and my goal was to work in international business. And I made that happen in 2010 is when I got a job for the Japanese company in the Philippines. I started at the bottom. Then by 2012, I worked my way up to an executive management position. So the career and everything was going good on the outside between Tokyo, Manila, and the Silicon Valley. I was doing pretty well for myself. I was around 28, 29, 30, around those years. But then things really took a turn for the worst in 2013 when I lost my father to suicide. Because that kind of emotional blow was really broke my Iron Man facade. Because that's what they teach you in the military. When you're in boot camp, they do a phase where they call it, we need to break you. So they'll have 3 drill instructors each side of it. These guys are huge. They're really big and scary, and they could probably eat you for lunch if they wanted to. And they stand on each side of you. Then they berate you in every single way possible. They talk about your mom, your dad, where you're from, how you look, all your insecurities, sensitivity, anything they've learned about you that's a weakness, they throw it at you, and they're screaming at full volume in your face. And they want you to cry. And when you do, that's when they humiliate you for crying. And this is how they break you. And they're playing this really weird music in the background. And, once you start to cry in front of them, since they humiliate you for showing emotion in that situation, they say you can't show emotion in the face of the enemy and all this spiel they give you, you become adverse to showing emotion to yourself. So you become terrified of your own emotions. So for me, having to go into my own emotions and admit that I had a problem was terrifying. It's a sign of weakness, and I had this kind of association, this feeling of imminent death if I ever admit that I have something wrong with me. And this is pretty standard in all the branches of the military. So I carried this kind of thing with me until I lost my dad, and that was when I really started to break down, and I turned to alcohol and drugs because I'm still working a corporate job. I can't afford to just lay in bed all day, and I don't have anyone that I can turn to for any kind of financial support because I'm on my own on the other side of the world. So the only way to try to keep it together really was just try to maintain a baseline state of equilibrium Monday through Friday. Then Saturday, Sunday that's when I start to deal with things by substance abuse, and it's quite a common thing too with young veterans in the military, particularly alcohol. I did have a bit of a drinking problem when I was in the military, but this just graduated into drinking and illegal drugs when I got out because I don't have anybody to keep tabs on me like before. And so that really, I want to say from 2013, the end of 2013 and 14 and 15, it really sent me in a downward spiral to a really dark place in life. I had a really bad case of insomnia. Sometimes I only sleep maybe 1 hour or 2 hours a night. I had a severe substance abuse problem. I could not just be sober. Like, being sober was not possible for me. So I would always have to smoke marijuana or take pills or have to drink a lot just to make it and not have a kind of a breakdown, I guess. During situations at work, I would just lose my head with clients and end up messing up contracts. I would be very edgy. I couldn't really socialize normally anymore. I had a huge problem with social anxiety. And I was in a relationship at the time, and that also took a really bad turn for the worst because both of us had our own issues. But I think for me, it was the mood swings. Like, one little thing that would irritate me would turn into 3 days of not sleeping and having this giant mental breakdown over something that's not really that big of a deal. The dependence too. I became very clingy, very needy because there was kind of like a bipolar flip-flop. And I think this might be common to people with trauma, where you have a huge, I don't know how I say this. One side of you is very, very vulnerable, weak, and a mess, but the other side of you is totally opposite of that. And it's, I guess, the way the mind kind of polarizes itself to cope with the emotional gravity. And that was really plaguing my relationship. And then in 2015, I remember I was abusing substances quite heavily, and my girlfriend said she'd had enough, and she said I needed help. And I remember I just snapped. I was under a lot of pressure at work. I was working up to sometimes 12, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes going on business trips and all this. And I just come home from having a good time with my friends out at the beach to my girlfriend confronting me about my emotional problems, saying that she had enough and she wanted to leave me. So I just snapped, and I wanted to commit suicide right then and there. So I grabbed a hunting knife and I just put it in the back of my neck, and I started to run it down the side just to make her watch. That's how crazy I was. It's like, you want me to deal with my emotional problems? I'll show you how. And as soon as I did that, luckily she threw me into a wall. Pretty strong girl. So threw me into a wall and stopped me. And she was totally traumatized. Her hands shaking. To call the police and the ambulance and all that. I had a cut in the back of my neck. And that was when I realized, I can't do this anymore. And I need some help. And so I did what most veterans do. I went to the VA office. I signed, did all my paperwork. 2 weeks later, they called me back for an eval. So I had my eval. By the end of the eval, the therapist said, all right, we'll give you a notice of what we decide within around another few weeks. And then they rated me as 100% service-connected, disabled, I guess, with PTSD. And they said I'm a danger to myself and others, and I need treatment immediately. So when I got this letter in the mail, that's when I went down to the VA and I said, this is the letter you guys sent me. I had a lot of issues with my girlfriend. She'd already broken up with me by then. I lost my job. All my performance at work started to really go down the drain. And so I decided, okay, I need help. My life is falling apart. I don't know what else to do with myself. And so I'll never forget, she told me, you need to wait 2 months for the primary care doctor to refer you to the mental health specialist. And the mental health specialist wait list is 3 months. It's like, I'm a veteran that just tried to commit suicide in front of his partner around a few weeks ago. And I need to wait a minimum of 5 months to see someone. And I said, yeah, that's how it is. And if you don't like that, then you can pay out of pocket to see an outside therapist. And so I was like, I don't know, what am I going to do about this? I just lost my job, right? So I remember I went to an outside therapist, and he basically did an eval, and he said, all right, I want to put you on anti-depressants. I want you to start Prozac, Zoloft, all these other kind of things. And I really wasn't wanting to go that route because that's what my dad did. My dad was on Prozac for 20 years. And I remember as soon as he stopped taking it, he would just go bananas. Like, he would totally flip. His SSRI medications, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they basically isolate serotonin molecules in your receptor sites. So it gives you this false sense of being in a good mood. And whenever you stop taking it, all your serotonin is depleted from out of your brain. So you go into really negative mood. You get very agitated, very irritable, very depressed, very sad. So I wasn't really trying to go that route because they weren't offering me any real solution. Okay, come in. I talk to them about these things that happen. How does it make you feel? It makes me feel X, Y, Z. Okay, take a pill, come back in a week. And that was the whole plan. And I wasn't really with that. So I didn't feel like I was really getting anywhere. And I was on the edge because if certain things irritated me or I get triggered, I just snap sometimes. I proved that I already could. So that's when I decided to start looking into different alternatives because I was still on this waiting list and it was maybe about, a few weeks in, and there was nothing promising in sight, right? So I came across a study that the VA did with the University of Indiana in 2014, where they put a group of 120 veterans through a controlled study doing yoga classes 3 times a week. And I was reading the results because I knew how to interpret these case studies working in the medical field and the military. And the results looked really promising. So reduced anxiety, better relationships, better moods, better control over their emotions, better sense of self, better peace of mind. And I got really interested in this idea. That's when I started to research into it. And around a year later in 2017, when I decided to go to India to study yoga. And that's when my life totally started to turn around. Because my intention of studying yoga was not to be, a fitness instructor where you go in a gym and you people how to stretch. I really wanted the spiritual aspect of it because that's the part I thought I would get the most healing out of that. Yoga is a practice of realigning your energy to divinity. And I look at this whole mess we get in our thoughts and our mind and our egos and these kind of psychological patterns that we have. Whenever we pick an identity and identify with it, okay, I have PTSD. And then the mind will hold on to a narrative, which is what I was doing. Was, okay, I have all these excuses to do things. I was in the military. I'm a veteran, so I'm messed up. Therefore, I have the God-given right to do X, Y, Z. So rather than go that approach of trying to fight this long battle with my mind, I like the idea that if you use a practice to realign you to the energy of God or the energy that creates all life, that energy is perfect and that energy has no flaw. So if you embody that energy, the mind is powerless to fight that. And that's a kind of thing that really appealed to me about studying yoga as a spiritual discipline. And I did that for around 3 months in the Uttarakhand province near Rishikesh. That's where yoga was actually created. And I did that under the tutelage of someone they call a sadhu. So a renunciate, someone who forsakes all of the material life of the world and dedicates their entire life to connecting with God in a way. Because their whole mission in life is to eliminate karma so they don't have to reincarnate. Under that belief system, in the Hindu belief system, if you create karma, then you have to resolve it in lives. Mm-hmm. So their whole, journey or mission in life is to not create the karma that will cause you to reincarnate by staying connected to God. So by forsaking the material world. And I lived as a renunciate for 3 months. And it was probably one of the best time periods of my life. I did a lot of healing in that by forsaking this material attachment, this ego, and completely tuning into how do I get in touch with the creator and embody and live that energy. And the physical practice of yoga as well. It's really beneficial for people with trauma because it brings your mind completely into the present moment. Because if you think about a person that's traumatized, the mind will do 2 things. Number one is it likes to jump in the future and create all of these thoughts of worry and anxiety. This happened, so I'm going to have this, grand master plan to counter this and this and this and this. And we think about all these situations that haven't happened and it stresses us out. Or depression is when our mind goes back in the past. Oh, my girlfriend broke up with me. I lost my job. I have this. I'm sad about it. So we're not living fully in the present. So the practice of bringing the mind completely 100% into the present with the body. And then from there, moving into the awareness of the deeper levels of mind is where a lot of the healing happens. When you're able to separate and observe yourself as if you're observing someone else. This is the whole purpose of yoga. The asana is a spiritual discipline. All the postures are to get your body to sit in the full lotus pose. That's ideal for meditation. And doing that is very powerful to allow you to separate from yourself, to get in the perspective of the observer, the Atman, they call it. And spending time there, you're able to see your mind, recognize your patterns, and start to let some things go. And I feel like I dumped a lot of my baggage off in India. I was able to find myself again in a way. And coming out of that, I realized that everything that I was doing was just a result of repressed emotions, that I had no capability for emotional intelligence. I feel this way because of this, therefore, this is how I'm going to express this emotion in a healthy way. For me, it was just reactionary. And I didn't even know why I would do the things I would do because I felt these ways. And I had no ability to see what I was doing until it was already over, until I'm saying I'm sorry and doing damage control versus being able to first start stopping myself and really digging into why these things have happened.
Let me just pause here for a second and reintroduce you. So I'm speaking with Robert Greene, Green Earth Wellness, and his website is greenearthwellness.online. He can be reached there. So, Robert, you clearly have a pretty heightened level of self-awareness. Did I'm just curious, did you go in? Were you just born with this? Or did things shift for you?
I had to earn it.
You had to earn it.
You have to earn it. I mean, the biggest test of it, I remember my guru, he told me I had to go in a cave for 3 days to do Vipassana. And this was when I was really starting to get into my practice and really took me over a line. And I guess in a way brought me to a different plateau. It's because when you live in isolation, like in the traditional yogic practice, do something called Vipassana. I think that might be popular in the US too, where you go into a center, then 10 days you don't talk or you don't have any sensory input. I did the same kind of thing for 3 days, but in the middle of a cave in complete darkness. And that's when I was really confronting myself and realized, a lot of us have this external dependence on an internal feeling. I want to feel good about something, so I'm going to look for some stimulation outside of myself, right? Or if we feel something, like we're triggered by something. Let's say, I don't know, I see an advertisement with someone that looks like my ex-girlfriend that I lost, and it'll trigger me for a feeling of sadness. We then seek an external source to stimulate our senses to quell this emotion. We'll do this like comfort eating, for example. For me, it was turning to substances. I feel bad about something, I need to alter my state. So being in that state of total isolation, I was forced to really confront myself and really have nowhere to turn, nowhere to go, no phone to look at, no computer to watch, no substances to put in, nothing to binge eat on, anything like this. And it brought me to the realization that everything we feel internally is a result of something that exists already inside of us. And the only thing that keeps us from feeling, say, for example, positive feelings of love, joy, peace, happiness, and the things that we want to feel, are our own minds blocking that. Because it's very easy to feel negative, and the mind will take a negative narrative and it'll start to put it on auto loop. Because a lot of times we look at things that we don't have, that we don't have with us in our present moment, things that we had before, and we'll go into this state of lack, the state of wanting, the state of desire. But that experience really brought me to a plateau of, if you want to feel these ways that are already inside you, why do you always need to have something outside of yourself to feel something that exists within you? And that was when I started to really change and to be able to I like to call it clearing the clouds of mind. Like this place of peace is always within us. And it's always waiting for us, like the sun. And the only time we can't see the sun is when the clouds are in the way. It doesn't mean the sun is not there. The sun is always there. It's when we remove the clouds of mind, we can get in touch with that. And that's what the practice really taught me through the meditation and through what I've learned in India.
So you founded Green Earth Wellness. What's your mission with this?
My mission is to share what I've learned on my journey, especially with veterans, with men in general, because men generally, we have a very low level of emotional intelligence, especially when we're traumatized and we act out these patterns that are usually unhealthy and bring our life a lot of stress and chaos. And we do things to make our situation worse because we're unaware. So if I can help share this experience with people by bringing them a bit outside of their comfort zone, not to the extreme that I went to, but to learn these practices, get them in touch with nature. Because when we can get in touch with nature and the harmony and balance of the world around us, and we can start to apply that to our own inner self, then we can use these practices to transform our life. And that's what I want to do. That's been my mission in life now for the past around 2.5 years. And it will be probably till the day I die, is how do I help people understand themselves better and share what I've learned so I can help improve the quality of their self-awareness and in turn improve the quality of their lives.
Yeah, man, it sounds awesome. And how specifically do you do this? You do it through courses or workshops or both, or
I
what?
have online now because of the travel restrictions. It's very hard for people to move around, but we
Sure.
have I have two online programs. One of them is called Finding Paradise Within. So it's a simple set of practices you can do to reattune yourself to that vibration. It's kind of like the meat and potatoes of everything I've learned and boiled down to a simple program where you can do this kind of as your own self-imposed therapeutic kind of session. You do the whole series of exercises. It takes about a half a day, or you can pick and choose which one you want to do. I also have another online program about transforming yourself. So a holistic immersion. It's an 8-week course where I walk you through a series of exercises, doing homework assignments, doing things where you can basically start to recognize yourself and do certain practices that will heighten your level of self-awareness and allow you to, I guess, conquer your mind in a way. And in
Hmm.
January 2021, when these restrictions ease up, we also do yoga retreats or wellness retreats. We do that in the island here I'm in the Philippines. And we're also planning on March to take people trekking in Nepal to the Annapurna circuit. Because pushing yourself physically is a great way to challenge yourself mentally. It's typically in Tibet, Nepal. These treks are seen as a pilgrimage where you're going to a walking meditation. That's what they call it. So as a way to help shape the mind through a physical challenge.
So I'll have those linked up at the show notes page here, if that's okay. The traumatherapistpodcast.com. So as we kind of wind down, Robert, a lot of therapists, counselors of various kinds, coaches, advocates are listening to this. Given your experience with trauma, with PTSD, what do they need to hear? What do these clinicians need to hear in terms of your message and working with people who've experienced similar experiences to yourself?
This is my subjective opinion, and this is what worked for me, so I'll keep it at that. I won't say this is a universal, and it's definitely not in the textbooks of what they study in their curriculums. But if you look at the mind is a result of the lower form of human ego. And I notice in Western psychology and Western medicine, we don't really have a direct connection to spirit. Medicine likes to kind of stay away from that aspect of the self. And if we start to recognize that, if we start to recognize that there is an awareness that's deeper than just the physical body, there's an awareness and there's a consciousness that's deeper than just the human ego, and we start to tap into that, then, when you start to treat trauma, if you look at it as a way of trying to fix something that's broken, you're always going to be fighting an uphill battle. The perspective that I've taken on is there is an energy within me that's aligned to the creator, the energy that creates all life. And if I can just reattune to that, like having a guitar, right? If you play it too hard and it goes out of tune, it doesn't mean it's broken. You just need to retune it. So retuning your vibration, retuning your mind to spirit and to an energy that's more powerful than anything in this world has very, very profound healing effects. And it depends on how open people are to. I think that's severely underutilized in Western medicine and Western psychology. And we depend way too much on the minds. And especially when we look at the idea of prescribing people medication, because if I had a substance abuse problem where I was addicted to illegal drugs and alcohol, and then they just wanted to stick me on antidepressants, that's still not teaching me to empower myself by using the power of my mind. It's still just switching the addiction and dependence from one illegal substance to a legal substance. And the energy and the psychology I'm still working on is addiction. It's just shifted forms. So rather than going in that direction, maybe it's necessary in some cases, but empowering people to understand the natural God-given gifts they have within them as a way of reattuning and aligning and embodying that energy has profound healing effects. And I've never been, after 2 sessions with a therapist, I've never been back. And I haven't really felt the need because I felt that this journey that I went on my own with these holistic practices have gotten me a lot farther than sitting on a couch with a therapist and saying, okay, what do you feel today? What do you do this? Do you want to do that? And it's brought me to a place of, I don't know, finding a sense of peace that I've always been looking for, to be able to be comfortable in myself, to be able to be in my own presence and not need to alter my state and just appreciate my own consciousness and be at peace with my own energy. And it took me a pretty extreme journey to get there. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people are seeking the same thing. So I highly recommend that whoever therapist or counselor, anyone's listening to this, to not really write off the aspect of spirit as just some kind of hocus pocus stuff. It's real, it really exists, and it really has profound benefits for healing.
Awesome. That's beautiful, man. I love what you're doing. Your message is so powerful, and I just really appreciate you coming on here and sharing, the intimacy and vulnerability of your journey. It's what I hope this podcast is all about. As we close out here, can you share with us any go-to book recommendation? Anything, whether, trauma or spiritual related or not, anything that you'd like to share.
Go-to book, well, let me see. There is a book called the Hatha Pradipika. It's a standard textbook for yoga, and this basically outlines a practice of what it's about as a spiritual practice. It's a pretty popular book. If you can search that in kind of Google or Amazon, I'm pretty sure they have it everywhere. And there's a book that was written, it was called Emotional Intelligence. The name of the author is here. No.
I think that's Daniel Goleman.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
it.
Okay.
But also read, and I would recommend to anyone, especially men, if you're going through a rough time in your life and you're trying to understand yourself better, that book is really, really profound and powerful in helping you digest and understand emotions and develop a sense of emotional intelligence.
Awesome. Well, Robert, man, you're certainly one inspiring dude, and I'm glad you came on here. Thanks for waking up at 5 a.m. to do this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Keep in touch.
Once again, thank you to Somatic Experiencing for sponsoring this podcast. Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to resolving trauma worldwide by providing professional training and education in somatic experiencing. It was founded by Dr. Peter Levine, author of the bestseller Waking the Tiger, who developed somatic experiencing based on explorations of how animals deal with threat, nervous system overwhelm, and traumatic experiences on a daily basis. Learn more about somatic experiencing and the SE professional training program at traumahealing.org/TTP. That's traumahealing.org/TTP.